Good morning and welcome back. Thank you, as always, for your presence, your interest, your dedication to this practice. And we will continue with this practice, and we will continue with our review of the entire course. And today we are reviewing the practice of the 5 flowers. And you will remember the 5 flowers. The 5 flowers is a term from Taoist medicine. And I say Taoist as opposed to traditional Chinese medicine because it's a spiritual concept that is integrated into medicine. It's a very spiritual view of how the body works. It's an esoteric, energetic description of physiology and anatomy. And therefore, it is easily something that we can transform and use as a contemplative practice, like we can with all things medical, really. But this one is particularly easy because it's showing us something, telling us something about how the body works that has to do with the interface between consciousness and matter, body and mind. And it is the study of exactly what we just contemplated, which is how everything appears and disappears. And this class of meditations is a fundamental aspect of all spiritual lineages, especially from the classical Asian sources, but fundamental to Vipassana, classical Buddhist Southeast Asian meditation, and a fundamental aspect of all other lineages that observe the nature of reality coming and going, arising and dissolving. And so this is a fundamental part of Dzogchen, Mahamudra, the practices that observe the mind directly and observe that thoughts are like clouds passing in the sky. Or in the Vipassana tradition, the emphasis is observing that the body sensations arise and dissolve. The mental states arise and dissolve. The emotions arise and dissolve. And this is an aspect of listening to the heart practice also. Everything is arising and dissolving. Every pulse arises and then subsides. So this practice of the 5 flowers is based on the anatomical connection between the heart and the 5 sense organs, the physiological connection, and the interface between consciousness and the biorhythms of the body. The anatomical connection is that the heart is said to be the root, and the sense organs are said to be the 5 flowers. So the sense organs are said to have one root, and the sense organs are said to open outward and close and open and close. And that's the biorhythmic aspect of the sense organs that is described here. And it is said that the heart nourishes the five sense organs through the root, which is correct. Because the heart is pumping blood to the eyes, and without blood circulation, the eyes cannot function, pumping blood to the ears, the tongue to the nose, to the skin. And so therefore the pulsation of the heart is pumping nutrients and life force, oxygen, prana, chi, to the organs so that they can operate. There's an anatomical basis of this root supplying nourishment to the flowers. And therefore the stems or the stalks would be the arteries. And it is also said, and this is where it is Taoist mysticism, and that is that the sense organs are flowers because they open and close. Now, we know from our study and practice of this that the only sense organ that actually opens and closes physically is the eyes. But this is an analogy of how consciousness comes to the surface of the body and then withdraws. And therefore, we see that this links to all of the various teachings and traditions and practices that say that consciousness comes from the heart and goes outward to the world, and then it withdraws back to the heart. And this is going on not only on a biorhythmic daily basis, but this is also how we incarnate at the moment of the first heartbeat, that consciousness then begins to spread into the developing embryo and fetus, and that this is also the process that happens after the last heartbeat, that consciousness withdraws back into the heart where it originally started. And withdrawing back into the heart means withdrawing back into space before there was matter. So this teaching then of the heart being the root of the senses implies that the heart is the source of the outer world. And that implies that consciousness withdraws from the outer world on a biorhythmic basis. And that biorhythm is not just every day and night, but that biorhythm is actually life to life. So this is a fundamental teaching, very simple in Taoist medicine, but very profound because it points to how consciousness operates in matter and how consciousness operates in nature and how everything appears and disappears and how forms arise and dissolve. So this takes us into the teachings and the explorations and the lineages and the philosophies of how does consciousness arise. And this is, of course, a big subject of study in modern science. How does consciousness arise? And there are so many things that we could consider philosophically and scientifically, but the most important thing is to experience it. How is consciousness arising? And this, for me, is a very simple way to just observe the process, to link it to the heart that is beating, because the heart that is beating is the immediate moment-to-moment cause of the sense organs perceiving. And that's easy enough to understand. And another very deep contemplation which is to simply be aware that when the heart stops beating, that most likely we're not going to be seeing the outer world anymore. That's conjecture, but I think it's pretty well established that, when the heart stops beating, that the outer world will disappear. I think that is safe to say. So this links us then to the question and the exploration of how does the world appear? How does the world arise? And this is closely related to the entire question of what is the world, because the world is arising to many people. The world is a collective experience. So the world every single day is being perceived by billions of people. And there's general agreement that it is a world. There's general agreement that these billions of beings are seeing the same thing. They are hearing the same things collectively. They are feeling the same kinds of sensations. And so we don't even question it. We don't even question that the world is there. But if we look at it more deeply, what we see is that the world is appearing within each individual mind stream, and that the world is therefore a creation of billions of mind streams that are each different and each unique based on the body and based on the sense organs and based on the brain and based on the karmas and all of these things. And each person is experiencing the world arising and dissolving in a unique way. And the world is only appearing to them. Their world is only appearing to them. But the world is appearing to all of these individual beings, and that is creating this collective experience. So this is the value of this particular practice, is to enter into a state where we can understand the teachings that everything is self-arisen. This is the basis of Mahamudra, Dzogchen. You will hear that phrase frequently in those lineages, self-arisen. So it does not mean that the world does not exist. We don't have to get confused by all of these questions. We just want to have a direct experience of how the world is self-arising. And it doesn't mean we create our own reality either. It's different than that. It means that everything is self-arisen because it is arising to the perceiver. Now, that's a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of undiscussed philosophy. And that doesn't matter because we have a practice that we are fortunate to have received through Taoist medicine. And that is that the sense organs are 5 flowers and the heart is the root. And that's all we have to know. And the culmination of each of the contemplations is we observe that everything we experience in the 5 sense organs is arising because the heart is pumping it into existence. And that gives us a sense of how the sensory experience of the world is self-arisen. All right, let's do it. Let's practice. With that review of the philosophy and the underlying concepts of the practice, let's return the attention to the pulse again. Find your favorite mudra. For some of you, this may be very familiar. This may be your primary practice. You may have been practicing this a lot. Bring the attention to the pulse at the wrist. Feel how the pulse wave at the wrist is the extension of the heartbeat in the chest. Feel how the heart contracts and pumps blood outwardly. From the center of the chest, the blood flows out in a pulse wave over and over. And now feel the stem that rises from the heart, from the root, and passes through the neck, the carotid arteries, and passes into the skull and goes to the eyes. And feel how the heart is pumping a wave of nutrients, fluid, oxygen, upward through the neck to the head to the eyes, and feel how the eyes are functioning because they are being nourished by the heartbeat. And you may find that you can feel a very subtle connection between the heartbeat at the wrist and very subtle pulsations in the face, maybe around the eyes. Now notice that the heart is beating in a continual flow. It's rising and dissolving continuously at the wrist, pumping continuously in the chest, flowing continuously upward through the neck to the head, flowing into and around the eyes continuously. And just like in a plant, there is movement up and down, in and out. And therefore, we can also feel that the circulation of blood returns from the eyes back to the root. And we can actually see, visualize, imagine that the heart is the root, the arteries are the stems, the sense organ is the flower. And we can feel how the heart is nourishing that sense organ. Now, just as we can feel the pulsation as a current at the wrist, then we can notice that the field of vision is a current also. Even with the eyes closed, we see light behind the eyelids. And that light is constantly changing. Notice that all those little patterns behind the eyelids, nothing is stationary for even a micro moment. It's a constant shifting pattern. And this is true when the eyes are open. There's nothing that the eyes see that lasts for even an instant. It's a river of light waves. It's a river of activation of rods and cones and radiant energy being converted into neurological energy, and the brain reconverting it into imagery. Constant micro moments flowing, giving rise to the field of vision. And so be aware of that link between the continual pulsation of the heartbeat, the river of the heartbeat at the wrist, and the continual flow, constantly changing moments in the field of vision. And feel how the heart is the root and the eyes are the flowers, and the heart is supporting the eyes, and everything that is arising in consciousness, the heart is pumping into existence. Now be aware also that we are experiencing the arising of this field of vision within our own eyes. No one else is seeing it. It is self-arisen. And yet, the sunlight that is coming through the eyelids is being perceived by all of us collectively. And be aware also that we are sharing this bardo of waking state. And specifically, we are in the bardo of meditation practice because we have a higher level of self-cognition that the field of vision is self-arising. But it is self-arising in the meditative state, in the bardo between the waking state. And at night, when we go to sleep, the eyes will close, and the prana of attention will no longer be focused outwardly. The prana of attention will withdraw back to the heart. And when it withdraws deeply enough, then it will enter the bardo of dreams, and the field of vision will become active again in the inner space of sight, and dreams will continue to be self-arisen. The dream images will be manifestations of our own consciousness. And when it withdraws even further, it will enter the state of the clear light, dreamless sleep, the Anandamaya kosha, the body of bliss. And that is self-arisen also. And then if our consciousness, prana, withdraws even further, whether it is in samadhi or at the last heartbeat, then we will go beyond the bardos of this life and enter the bardo of the in-between state of life after life, or the bardo of deep meditation. And so now bring the attention back to the heartbeat at the wrist and notice that the heart is pumping the blood to the eyes. And notice that the field of vision is flowing continuously. And notice that it is the flow of the heartbeat, the flow of the nutrients from the heartbeat, and that our consciousness arises and looks outwardly and then withdraws. And then arises and then withdraws. And all these states arise within ourselves. They are all self-arisen states. Okay, now return the attention to the heartbeat again. Feel the heart in the chest. Feel how the heart is pumping blood and feel the stems of the arteries rising to the ears.